thank you again for taking the time to talk about Peace DC. So if we can dive right in, what inspired you to put all of this together, and how long did it all take?
Sure. So last year we had so much success as a city by working together in passing my Secure DC omnibus bill and driving down crime and violence, ending the year with a 30-year low in violent crime, reducing violent crime by 35%. Crime is down in all categories in every area of the city. And so we knew that we needed to build on that success and continue to work with stakeholders across the city, work with our parents and families, our business community, our returning citizens, our police and firefighters, to make sure that we continue to drive down crime, but also to promote peace in the city. And so we have been working on this plan for several months. It includes dozens of new legislative interventions and new bills. It includes areas that we need to invest in our budget, and it also includes strategies that we are working on with various agencies locally and federally. And so as we put together Peace DC, we have four main areas that we're focused on. The first is around empowering and supporting our youth and promoting residential harmony. The second is around preventing violence before it occurs. The third is to bolster and support our public safety workforce. And the fourth area is around reducing recidivism, so that after somebody completes their sentence, we can set them up for a successful, productive life without repeat crime. And so those are the areas that we're really focused on with Peace DC. And our hope is that if we move forward with this plan, we can continue to see and build on the success that we've had as a city last year, and make sure that more people can be peaceful.
And that leads to my next question is, what differentiates this from Secure DC? Is it more of those wraparound component elements?
Well, Secure DC dealt with all different interventions. It was what we needed to see last year to fill the gaps that we saw around prevention of violence, where we set up the safe commercial corridors, around accountability for crime, where we filled the gaps as it related to carjacking prosecutions or other violent offenses, and improvements in government coordination, which really broke down a lot of the information flow barriers that we had previously, and set up public dashboards. So there were over 100 different interventions we had in Secure DC that we are seeing a lot of progress on. Peace DC does entirely different things. When we think about empowering our young people, it sets up a new pilot program for justice-involved youth to provide wraparound supports after somebody gets a deferred prosecution agreement or a deferred disposition agreement, to make sure that they're going to school, that they're going to after-school time programming, and that there are guardrails in place if you don't comply with the conditions of your release. With prevention of violence, it proposes a merger of our violence interruption programs that currently exist at the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement and the Office of Attorney General, that will be housed under WUNS, and will have improvements in consistent training, in coordination, in grant contract review and transparency, with supporting our workforce. Last year we did a lot in our public safety space to build up our police and fire departments with hiring bonuses, incentives, tuition assistance. Peace DC recognizes we now have to do more at the back end so that we don't have so much attrition with officers leaving the force. And so it sets up a new program where when you are eligible for retirement, you can still earn those benefits, but still earn your salary and stay on the force. Something that costs the district very little money, but will be very important to retention. And then with reducing recidivism, we worked with so many returning citizens and advocacy organizations who really made clear that the biggest barriers people are still having when they come home from serving a sentence, whether that be locally at our Department of Corrections or at our Bureau of Prisons facilities anywhere in the country, it's access to housing and access to employment. And that's why Peace DC really focuses on those areas to set up people for success.
And going off of, you had mentioned the merging of violence interrupters. If you can talk about why merge them under WUNS. We have obviously two people directly involved with WUNS now facing federal bribery charges. We've talked and you've told me about how there needs to be more follow-ups as it relates to how the grants are allocated. So why is WUNS the best place to do this versus OAG?
So look, WUNS certainly has areas of improvement, and we are laser focused on that, and it's why in this package we provide a 3-year advisory team to help with the transition. We provide requirements for consistent training and contract review and oversight. But it is an executive function. We need to have an executive agency be responsible for violence prevention so that we can do all of the coordination that we need. If somebody is on the brink of committing a crime and we get to them early enough, we need to have access to housing supports, to employment supports, to the police department in certain cases, to the mayor. And so it doesn't make sense procedurally to have a violence interruption program housed out of our local prosecutor's office. Those are two distinct functions. I'm very grateful to the work that the Attorney General has done and the Cure the Streets team has done to do this work well, but it is time that we have them merge and be managed out of an executive agency, which is really the more appropriate place for it.
And can the council handle that? Because we've already had these issues under ones, which is over, which the council oversees. So how, if you can talk about how residents can trust that we won't have any foul play, if you will, under ones this time around when we've already seen alleged foul play not too long ago.
So the indictment that came down for Dana McDaniels was something that happened in 2023. It doesn't excuse it. It is not acceptable. We still have a lot of questions about that. But there is new leadership now. We have a new permanent director in Quelly Sneed, who I speak to regularly about the need for heightened scrutiny of all of these grants, heightened determination of efficacy of how every tax dollar is being spent and how those coordination efforts are going. There are now safeguards that we've built in place for multiple layers of review of these grants. I worked with them to remove the middleman who was managing the grant disbursements, which to me never made sense. That should be a function happening out of the agency. So we have done a lot with ones over the last year to see those improvements, and there is more work to go, which we lay out in the Peace DC plan of what we think needs to happen at ones in this merger to make it successful.
And do you see the program as a whole still being successful? I'm sure you saw over the weekend about the OAG violence interrupter charged with murder. If you can talk about, is the risk at this point, are the benefits of the program outweighing the risks, or do we need to reconsider this program as a whole since it's people previously tied to the justice system? How can we go about maybe better vetting to make sure that they aren't sucked back in?
So I did see that news. It is very sad to see that connection between one of our Cure the Streets workers and this alleged homicide. It's a complicated space, I will say, certainly. And one of the things that we've done is not only talk to people involved in this work in DC, both people on the ground who do the violence prevention, people who have been benefited from it and what kind of helped them get on a better path. But we've also talked to experts around the country about what has worked, whether that be in Oakland, in Chicago, in Boston. And I believe in this model. I believe that when done well and properly with the right buy-in from everybody in the executive and in the government, we can drive down crime and violence, just like we've seen in the priority areas over the last year. But there also needs to be more front office consistency and professionalism when it comes to these grants, which is why we've shared this outline of how we think we can do so most productively. So more work needs to be done, certainly, to make sure that all of these dollars are going where they need to go, and that there is public trust in the efficacy of this spending. But I do believe that when done right, this system of violence prevention is an important piece of our larger public safety ecosystem.
And if you can talk about the 6-month reentry pilot program, pivoting a little bit, which would move prisoners from Federal Bureau of Prisons to the Department of Corrections. What are your hopes for that, and can the Department of Corrections really handle that influx of people when they're already short-staffed?
So I'm glad you raised DOC staffing. That's another piece of Peace DC, is to provide this retention benefit to DOC staff as well, so that people can get their retirement benefits, but still stay on the force. We have had major understaffing problems with DOC for many years, and that's something that we have to address and is a focus of mine in this budget. But when it comes to transitioning back folks who are serving sentences anywhere in the country, we don't have our own prison in Washington, D.C. So if you're serving a sentence over a year, you can be sent literally anywhere in the country. And as a result, many people lose contact and relationships with their families and with their communities. And we know that when somebody is returning back home to DC, we have over 2,000 people a year coming home from BOP facilities. The biggest barriers that we have are around housing and employment. And the earlier we start that reentry process, the better we are going to be at setting them up for success. So this is something that we are talking with DOC about, with BOP, as well as the U.S. Attorney and Congresswoman Norton's office to develop a system of how this would work. We certainly want to make sure that if we are adding capacity to our Department of Corrections, that that is met with an increase in staffing and programming costs to take on those additional people.
I think my time is up. Anything else you'd like to add?
Just that I am so grateful with how many people have worked with us on this plan across the city. We had a lot of success with driving down crime and violence after Secure DC was passed, and it's really important that we continue to work together to build on that success and to promote more peace. And so that's why we are working hard to be comprehensive in this plan, with empowering our young people, with preventing violence, with bolstering our public safety workforce, and with interventions to drive down recidivism. And so I hope that residents can get engaged. We're going to be having hearings on this plan and on different pieces of the bill coming up, the various bills, and I look forward to hearing from folks about how they can be a part of our solutions to promote peace in Washington, D.C.
Great. Thank you so much.